everyone, and Secretary General, thank you so much for being here with us. It's a real honor. I want to start with the basics for anyone in the room who isn't familiar with the Digital Cooperation Organization, which we can also call the DCO for brevity. It was founded in 2020 by 5 countries, I believe. Yes. Tell me how that founding came about and why the organization was needed.
Well, certainly, but first, thank you for having me. It's great to have the Fortune Most Powerful Women chapter here in Saudi. It is the place to be. So we're very happy to have you here, and thank you for having us. And going back to DCO, as we see digital economy now, it's growing very rapidly. You know, last year alone, it was 16% of the overall GDP. Expected in 2030, 70% of the GDP is going to be driven by digital solutions. Therefore, that comes with abundance of opportunities. But to harness these opportunities, countries need to transform. And for them to transform, they really need to have a lot of investment in either capital and investments, either policy regulations, human capital development, infrastructure as well. Very difficult for one country to do it alone. And this is where the DCO has been established. Established in the sense that digital economy is the way forward to diversify their economies, and they cannot do it alone. They have to share best practices. So therefore, these 5 member countries created the Digital Cooperation Organization, the first intergovernmental organization focusing on digital economy. And fast forward till today, we're very proud that we represent 16 member states from Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, and we're expanding in size. 800 million in population. That by itself is a huge consumer market for any technology company that wants to expand. The objective or the mission of DCO is to enable every person, every government, every company the opportunity to prosper in the digital economy. And that's by facilitating the connecting the supply and the demand between governments and between the private sector.
Mm-hmm. And those first 5 countries you started with, just for context, were Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, and Pakistan.
Sure.
Tell me a bit about a tangible example, maybe, of how you're working with one of the member countries at the moment. It's great to talk in broad brushstrokes about digital inclusivity in the economy, but what does that look like on a practical level right now in one of your countries?
Well, we truly believe that a digital economy is a landscape that looks at digital business, enablers, and also society as well. And when we look at the engine that flows the digital economy is the private sector. And therefore, for any country to really prosper, it needs to have the right legislations, policies to enable these private sector to co-create and co-design solutions with the governments. And this is where sometimes there's a communication gap between the governments and the private sector. This is where we come in. We come in and we look at what is the business landscape of every country. And we see where are the gaps, where are the areas of improvement when it comes to policies and regulations. We also recommend the packages and the incentives to attract the right investments. Last month alone, we celebrated attracting more than $700 million to Pakistan. All digital investments.
And what's Pakistan going to put that money towards in terms of its digital economy?
Oh, in multiple, either in infrastructure when it comes to connectivity, cloud computing. Also, last year alone, Pakistan included or added to its GDP $3.8 billion because of software exports. So definitely that investment will go into human capital, as well as computing power when it comes to AI, and also looking at enabling the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us very briefly about how a country enters the organization. We were chatting a bit backstage, and it's an application process. What are you looking for?
Well, we're looking for like-minded nations that are willing to change, that have the mindset of growth when it comes to betting on digital economy, and that has the openness to welcome best practices from other countries and share the competitive advantage that they have with other countries.
And my colleague Mihal mentioned slightly earlier about last week being a big week for the region. We have President Trump here signing multiple deals with the Middle East. What does that mean for you? What do those tech-focused deals mean for the work you're doing at the DCO?
Definitely, this is an enabling opportunity, considering that Saudi, and also if we look at the region, the Gulf, is positioned in a very unique positioning, having very affordable and cheap energy and diversifications of also resources of energy, very powerful infrastructure when it comes to connectivity. You know, imagine that Saudi alone has 77% 5G connectivity, which is double the world's average. So that's very powerful when it comes to computing power for AI data centers and others. Third, the geographic location, connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa. And last but not least, a very tech-savvy youth population. From the Gulf, 60 million in population. More than 80% are under the age of 30. So very youthful, very tech savvy. So what does that mean is that this region is a great infrastructure for any innovative technologies going forward.
And how does the organization work with the biggest governments in the world, the Americas, the European governments? What does that cooperation look like?
Well, we work with them as any other countries. We enable them with the know-how and the guidance that we have, and as well as we try to connect them with our member states to get more collective shared best practices. Therefore, we're very much strengthening our relationship with the European Union, with ASEAN, with African Union, as well as we have a great partnership with the GCC Council, Arab League, and OIC. We believe that not only are we enabling our member states, but how can we enable other countries through the best practices that we have done throughout our member states.
Let's continue the conversation about AI for a second. AI is a world of opportunity, but at the same time, it's expensive to run. It's very resource intensive to keep data centers going. How are you thinking about making sure that the widespread adoption of AI in the global north doesn't deepen the divide that we're seeing in terms of the global south? And how do we ensure that they are not only consumers of this emerging technology, but also producers of it?
Well, that's what keeps us up at night. Really, it's a huge concern that we have. We've been established to bridge that digital divide. Now we're faced with a new divide, which is bigger, which is the AI divide. If we have 2.6 billion people today that are even not connected, they're not even on the internet, they don't even have devices, they're off the grid. So imagine, how are they going to use AI? We looked at last year alone, it was $300 billion investment in AI, but how many countries? A handful of countries are investing, and a handful of countries are innovating. That means that there's a huge portion of the world that don't even have access to such kind of technology to create their local content.
So what are you doing to help?
Great question. Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to decentralize the capacities and the computing power, meaning that we believe that every country has its competitive advantage. There are countries that have the capabilities to create their computing power and capacities, like the likes of Saudi, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, and so on. But there are other countries that have the brain power and have the talents that can create that local content and create these innovations. And here is where we're working first on infrastructure, creating decentralized capacities within our member states where countries around that capacity can benefit from that computing power. Second is that we're creating frameworks, new frameworks for intellectual property, and also how to share the local content between the countries. And third is how to create shared pools of talents. between the member countries.
What does that look like? That's a very interesting point. How does that happen, sharing a pool of talent?
Well, for instance, and we're just testing it here right now in Saudi, since there is computing power, what we did is a program looking at AI in healthcare, for instance. So we identify a challenge, and then we call out for talents from our member states. Now we have 7 scientists, one from Nigeria, one from Pakistan, one from Morocco, one from Jordan, and 3 from Saudi that come together and work on solving this solution. After they solve this solution, then we help in monetizing and commercializing that solution to become a company, where other states like Qatar and like Kuwait are investing in these ventures.
That's really powerful. We're in a room full of women who care about the future of women and girls. What are the unique challenges that come with engaging women in the digital economies in these countries that are not as well served at the moment? And what can we as leaders, as business people in the room do to help?
Well, that's a topic that is very dear to my heart. And it scares me when I read reports that by 2030, 350 million women will not have access to internet. That by itself is not just only a social loss, but also an economical loss. And this is where we really need to invest heavily on not only upskilling women in digital capabilities, but also giving that access on how to use the technology, because it's a learning platform as well as an economical platform to find jobs. So what we have done in DCO is a program called We Elevate, which is to move women traditional businesses into online businesses. And that's powerful because that's direct contribution to GDP and job creation. Till now, we supported 127 women businesses in Rwanda, and now we're moving into Nigeria, and we're moving to the Middle East as well. And it came from a story, if you may. I know the time is off, but
tell the story.
But it's
Keep it brief, but tell the story.
It's a very warming story from a woman from Taif, and I met her. She's a widow. She has 6 kids. And the thing is, her education was till high school. And she created these essences, soaps, perfumes from a distinct rose called the Taif roses. And she sells to only the city of Taif, but she wanted to expand her business more. So she knocked on my door once and said, "Are you Dima Yahya?" And I said, "Yes." "They told me you can fix my business."
Did you?
"I want you to move me online." So we supported and helped her by creating an e-commerce solution, but that's not enough. We have to support in the financial acumen, training in marketing, payment gateways, supply chain, delivery, and so on. Now, fast forward 2 years, she's selling to 90 locations in the world. And she recruited 60 other women. And she has a revenue of roughly $1 million every year. So that's the power of just moving a women business into an online business.
Secretary General, it's such important work. Thank you for telling us about it. We'll all be watching closely to see what you do next. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.